Vincent, other than he works at the Lakeshore office, and he has just been recently elected as the new club president. This time I'd like to welcome Vincent up for speech number 2.
Thank you, Daryl. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. After nearly 50 years, I can tell you this. 50 years of living, I can tell you this. Life is very short. And I found That's why I'm always looking for ways to maximize my enjoyment of living. I want to squeeze as much out of life as I can. And I found that one way to make life create more happiness for us is to help other people. And so to bear this out, let's review the lives of 2 very notable individuals, and I believe we will see the correlation between a happy, successful life and a life that reaches out to others. Born in Scotland in 1835, Andrew Carnegie was 13 when his unemployed father decided to move the family to America. Soon after arriving, Andrew had to forfeit his education in order to help his father earn a living. But Andrew had a penchant. He liked to read. In those days, libraries charged for their services. But as luck would have it, Andrew came across a man who would open up his own personal library free of charge to working boys once a week. That was all Andrew needed. And young Andrew was resourceful and meticulous in his jobs, and by age 18, he became a personnel telegrapher and assistant for a superintendent at the Pennsylvania Railroad. He quickly climbed the ladder at the railroad, but he also began investing in the stock market and did very well. So well, in fact, that by age 30, he was able to retire from the railroad. It was at this time that Andrew Carnegie formed the Keystone Telegraph Company, and through it, created a giant merger between his company and both the Atlantic and Pacific telegraph companies. Then, with the advent of the famous Bessemer steel converter, a whole new era began to emerge in the steel industry. Thus, at age 40, Andrew Carnegie opened up a steel mill and began to capitalize on the huge demand from the railroad for steel rail and steel bridge components. By age 50, Andrew was busy buying other steel mills so he could control the steel industry in America. This made him so successful that by age 55, his annual take-home pay had mushroomed to $25 million a year. Finally, in 1901, at age 66, Andrew Carnegie sold his business to J.P. Morgan for $480 million, making him the richest man in the world. What do you think Andrew Carnegie did with $480 million? You might be surprised. He gave it all away. You see, what I didn't tell you was that throughout his career, Andrew Carnegie held this deep conviction that the rich were morally obligated to give to the poor. This conviction motivated him to begin giving back to society as early as in his 30s. Thus, by the time of his death at age 83, Andrew Carnegie's list of charitable acts included the building of nearly 3,000 public libraries worldwide, the establishing of a teacher's pension fund, the building of a World Peace Center in The Hague, and finally the establishing of a corporation that would grant financial aid to educational and research institutions. Andrew Carnegie, a master at picking investments, maximized his potential by making the greatest investment of all, the investment into helping his fellow man. There are other ways to give back to this world. A woman named Harriet Tubman was an African-American slave born in 1822 in Maryland, USA. Growing up, Harriet had it worse than just being a slave girl. She was a slave girl that was contracted out, and because of this, she suffered tremendous abuse. On one occasion in her early teens, an overseer attempting to stop a runaway slave hurled a heavy steel weight at him, hitting Harriet in the head instead. She almost died that day, but she survived, but struggled with epileptic seizures for the rest of her life. Just out of her teens, at age 20, Harriet married a non-slave African-American man named John Tubman. When she was 24, Harriet's owner died, and his widow was forced to sell her slaves. Now fearing that she would be sold to owners in the South, Harriet decided to run away in order to find freedom. She and her two brothers began the long journey northward to Canada, her husband choosing not to join her. The journey was so difficult that her brothers became fearful and turned back. Then again. Now all alone she traveled. One day she came across some people. These people were members of the abolitionist movement, a movement whose goal was to abolish slavery in America. Using a secretive process known as the Underground Railroad, they set out to lead Harriet to the freedom she longed so desperately for. Harriet finally made it to Canada, but with her freedom now achieved, she did the unthinkable. She returned to Maryland to help other slaves find freedom. In her 13 trips, Harriet Tubman, who was nicknamed Moses, was able to lead 70 people to freedom. If that wasn't enough, she also worked as a spy for the North during the American Civil War, and she was the first American woman ever to plan and lead a military operation. In one raid alone, she freed over 750 slaves. After the war, Harriet Tubman went on to become a renowned activist for African American and women's rights. Her life was so effective that following her death at age 91, Harriet Tubman was given a full military burial. A plaque was placed in her honor in her hometown of Auburn, New York, and a U.S. Liberty ship was crowned with the name the SS Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, the once poor, abused, epileptic slave girl, maximized her potential by helping other people. How can we maximize our potential? Based on what we've learned, I believe we need two ingredients, a problem and a passion. Andrew Carnegie's problem was poverty, but he discovered through his love for reading that knowledge empowered and prospered him, so he became passionate about building libraries and funding schools. Harriet Tubman's problem was slavery, so she became passionate about social freedoms. How about you? Do you see a problem in society worth investing time and energy to correct? If so, why not get involved? Begin to work at it a little bit every day until an unstoppable passion wells up within you. That passion will give your life inner strength and outward vitality. That passion will influence others around you to help. That passion will bring success to your endeavor. But do you know what the best part is? While you're busy solving someone else's problems, your own problems somehow get taken care of. It's a win-win situation. Does a maximized life interest you? It can be yours starting today. Pick a problem, become passionate about solving it, and who knows, maybe history will tell